Now, as Joe, would you come on, Joe, as they give you an opportunity to give? We've got a very special opportunity tonight. Several months ago, when all of this tragedy and all of these things started to happen, Joe doesn't seem to be a guy of many words, but I can tell you what, Joe Warren, he's a traffic investigator with Chattanooga Police. He's the guy that orchestrates all of our video and making it literally go throughout the United States. But he likes to be in the back. He doesn't want to be seen. He doesn't call himself a preacher, any of that. But the Lord touched his heart, and he wanted, out of his years of experience and out of what God was speaking to him, to share. And recently, with all that happened in Dallas and Baton Rouge, he came back to me and reminded me of that. And so I said, Joe, you come on. And so he's going to share from his heart tonight a message that's going to encourage you, it's going to challenge you. But it's coming from a veteran cop who knows what it's like. He knows what it's about. He knows what our families are going through. And he has some words of wisdom. And most importantly, I know that he has a word from God. So would you just let Joe know how much we appreciate all he does for Cop Church Chattanooga as he shares with us tonight.
Thank you, Jonathan. Said words of wisdom, and then I showed up. Jonathan, I appreciate that. Yeah, I've been around for a little while with the law enforcement field, and I do want to talk to you guys tonight, but I know there's a couple things that you guys have on your minds. Even though the lights are up, I can still see your faces. There's two things that are going on right now. The first thing is you're looking at me and thinking, what in the world is he doing up there? He's not a preacher. The second thing you're thinking is, who gave him that haircut? Let me address that first one. That last one first, because that's the easiest one. I went to the barber Friday, and my barber, bless his heart, is wearing an eye patch. I said, dude, what's up? He said, man, I had a stroke. Most people pretty much turn around and go get a haircut somewhere else. Yeah, we go back a long way, so I just sat down and got my haircut and said, well, whatever. As far as the me being up here, I'm just an old school motor cop, and I'm not a polished speaker. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a reverend. I'm doing good just to be reverent half the time. But the guys that know me the best, the guys in my group, in my traffic division that know me the best, know a couple things about me. I'm a Christian, and I'm not always very good at it. They know who I am, and but this is who's coming before you. It's not a preacher, not someone that's got deep words of wisdom, but I want to speak to my brothers and sisters who wear the badge in this time and in this environment. You guys are the ones I really want to talk to tonight, and the ones I want to encourage. Most of you guys that are in here, I've been in here a little bit longer than pretty much most of all of you. I don't see Mr. Bradley back there. He actually patrolled with Moses at one time. He must be out there in the back somewhere. But I've been doing this a while, and I really feel like I really wanted to talk to you guys. I really wanted to kind of share what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and I really was struggling with a lot of what was happening in our community, in our world, with the law enforcement profession, what we've been seeing recently. And so this is why I'm here. Currently, with according to the Officer Down Memorial page, we're up about 83%. Is that right? 83% in officers killed in assaults by gunfire this year. It's huge. I think back from this year, and some of the people that we lost. And the first one that comes to mind is a female rookie on her first day of the job. I think y'all remember that. Just recently, a senior officer, just days away from his retirement. And then we had Dallas, and we had Baton Rouge. And ever since those two events, just outside of Atlanta, an officer goes to a call for service and is ambushed. And we're seeing all kinds of stuff, and names being added to the memorial in D.C. on a daily basis. And it really breaks my heart. And I don't know if I've just been doing this job too long or what, but seeing this stuff unfold unfold. And I don't know how many of you guys watched the events in Dallas live on TV as it was coming out. I did, and I tell you, it's tough to watch. It's very tough to watch, to see a uniform lying in the street and me doing what I do. I know exactly what that means. I know exactly what that represents because I've seen it before. You know, I was there when we lost Donald Bond. We were working when we lost other officers. And it just, you know, having to see that and then see it on the TV and you know exactly what's going on, it breaks your heart. But I don't know if it means I've been doing this job for too long because I almost feel like I can't cry anymore. You know what I mean? It's such a tough thing that we're going through right now that I don't think I've got tears anymore. I don't know if I have any left. But, you know, right now we're getting kind of worn down. We're sending multiple cars to simple calls for service right now. We've got, you know, you get a disordered call, it used to be handled by one or two guys. You get a call for a theft, it's handled by one person, a wreck's handled by one. Now all of a sudden, law enforcement agencies across the country are doubling up. They're sending two-man cars. They're sending multiple officers to simple calls. And they're doing it for one reason. After Dallas, Baton Rouge, we realized that a lot of the people that are out there that want to hurt us have been emboldened by these attacks. And because of that, there have been a lot more attacks on officers that are not really making the news because fortunately the officers have been able to defend themselves or stop it in its tracks or whatever. But the very real threat of an ambush on us is all of a sudden shown up and really increased. You know, our job has always been dangerous, don't get me wrong, but here in recent weeks it's really gotten tough. And on top of that, you throw in the very real threat of terrorism that we've already experienced here in Chattanooga, and you start to get a feeling, if you're not a police officer, you start to get the feeling that, man, this is not exactly the line of work I want to get into. But the past few weeks have really been wearing us down, and we're patrolling right now with a real hyper sense of awareness of what's going on around us. Those of you that are on patrol, you know it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We've got our eyes really tuned in, and our ears are perked up big time, like looking for trouble under every little rock and stone. We're having to do that because of the very real threat that's starting to present itself throughout the country. But it physically wears you down. Just trying to do this day in and day out at this level of awareness that we have to keep is physically demanding. The current mood among police officers isn't good. Just look at anybody's Facebook feed that's a police officer and you see all these different negative feelings and whatever that's posted out there. And you get a good feel for what a lot of officers are thinking. They just feel broken and beaten down. There's a lot of folks in the public that don't seem to like us. Our very own politicians seem to be putting us out as the scapegoats for America's problems. You know, we seem to be losing the best of us on a daily basis. And, you know, the only ones that don't seem to be doing a whole lot of work right now are our recruiters. There's not a lot of people signing up for this job. Unfortunately, it looks like it might be another record year for attending police officers' funerals, and that's really tough. And I guess we've got a video or a PowerPoint thing too, if we can get it to play. There's a movie. If you want to pause it real quick before it starts playing, if you can. There's a movie that's out there, came out a few years ago, No Country for Old Men. How many of you guys seen that? You don't have to raise your hand because it's an R-rated movie. But in all honesty, it is a tough movie. If you've got kids, it's not a kid's movie. But for someone like me, an old cop, this movie is actually a pretty good movie. It's pretty intense. I'll tell you that right now. It's a tough movie. But Tommy Lee Jones plays a sheriff in this movie. Sheriff Ed Tom. They couldn't come up with a better name than that, but Sheriff Ed Tom was his name. And you see him, they didn't do any makeup to his eyes. He's got the wrinkles going on and like he's been up 16 hours straight or 26 hours straight, whatever it is. You see him throughout this movie, and his character really resonates with who I am or who I feel like I am right now. I know I don't look like I'm as old as Tommy Lee Jones, but I feel it sometimes. You know, after you've done this job for 20 years, you start to feel it, and I really resonate with his character. In this portion of the movie that I was about to play, Tommy Lee Jones' character had just been through a bunch of traumatic crime scenes and had an unprecedented amount of violence going through his town at the time. Had the Mexican drug cartel, you know, tearing it up, and then some hitman named Sugar, if I'm saying it right, going through just causing havoc. And Tommy Lee Jones' character is pretty much worn out by this time. So he goes to see an old friend of his, Ellis, and this Ellis character, according to the movie, was a retired sheriff's deputy that was shot in the line of duty and confined to a wheelchair. And he goes to talk to Ellis and to, you know, basically, you know, get some counsel from him, I guess. And I'll let it play if we can just sit here and watch it and listen to it for a second.
And back.
How'd you know I was here?
Who else would be driving up in your truck?
You heard it?
How's that?
Did you hear me? You're having fun with me.
What give you that idea? I seen one of the cats heard it.
How'd you know it was my truck?
I deduced it when you walked in.
How many of them things you got now?
Cats? Oh, I don't know, several. Well, it depends on what you mean by got. Some of them are half wild, some of them are just outlaws.
How you been, Ellis?
You're looking at it. I got to say, you're looking older.
I am older.
Got a letter from your wife. She writes me pretty regular. Keeps me up on the family news.
Didn't know there was any.
Told me you're quitting.
You want a cup?
Appreciate it.
How fresh is that coffee?
I generally make a fresh pot every week, even if there's some left over.
That man that shot you died in prison?
Angola. Yeah.
What'd you done? He'd have been released.
Oh, I don't know. Nothing. Wouldn't be no point in it.
Kind of surprised to hear you say that.
Well, all the time you spend trying to get back what's been took from you, more is going out the door. After a while, you just have to try to get a tourniquet on it. Your granddad never asked me to sign on as a deputy. Loretta tells me you're quitting. How come you're doing that?
I don't know. I feel overmatched. I always figured when I got older, God would sort of come into my life somehow. And he didn't. And I don't blame him. If I was him, I'd have the same opinion of me that he does.
You don't know what he thinks. I sent Uncle Mac's thumbbuster and badge over to the Rangers, put it in their museum. Your daddy ever tell you how Uncle Mac come to his reward? Gunned down on his own porch over in Hudspeth County. 7 or 8 of them come up there, all wanting this, wanting that. Uncle Mac went back in the house to get the shotgun. Well, there's ahead of him. Shot him in his doorway. Aunt Ella come out and tried to stop the bleeding. Uncle Mac all the while trying to get that shotgun. They just sat there on their horses, watching him die. After a while, one of them said something in Indian, and they turned and left out. Uncle Mac knew the score, even if Aunt Ella didn't. Shot through the left lung. And that was that, as they say.
When did he die?
1909.
No, I mean, was it right away or in the night, or when was it?
I believe it was that night. She buried him the next morning, digging in that hard old caliche. What you got ain't nothing new. This country's hard on people. You can't stop what's coming. It ain't all waiting on you. That's vanity.
That movie and that clip really, like I said, it resonates with me, and it resonates with a lot of other officers that I work with. We get to the point where this job just really starts beating you down, and we've seen a lot of officers leave our profession before their retirement. Before it's time for them to retire, we've seen several officers leaving this profession and going somewhere else. And we can't blame them. I know my wife and I talk about, how soon can you retire? How soon can you retire? That conversation comes up more and more, especially this last year. And I thought that little conversation from the movie was very interesting to me. And there's one thing I noticed that the dude Ellis told the sheriff, says, what you've got is nothing new. This country's hard on people and it's hard on cops. And in all honesty, I know right now the officer down Memorial Page has us up by 83% right now for the year. If you go back historically, even as recently as 2011, I think it is, we were actually at a higher rate of homicides on officers than we are right now. It's hard to believe it, but right now it feels bad, and it is bad, but what we have is really nothing new. I want to talk to you about a guy named Joshua in the Bible. The Bible is a very practical book to go to, even for our life and for our line of work. In fact, especially for our life and especially for our line of work. The Bible is a very practical book that we can rely on, a very practical resource. About a year and a half ago, Jonathan did a series on post-traumatic stress, teaching from the Bible steps that help you deal with and cope with post-traumatic stress. And if you have a chance, you want to look it up. I think it's on our audio books and so on and so forth. Look for the Showers to Sunshine. How do you say that? That series that has showers and sunshine in it. Look for that series. The first two messages specifically dealt with post-traumatic stress, and were really very, very good series talking about the stress that we deal with, and biblically, how to approach it, how to deal with that. But we're going to the Bible. We're talking about a guy named Joshua. Moses, if you recall, was the leader of the Israelites, and he led the Israelites, from Egypt and was going to lead them into the Promised Land, except for, like Jonathan mentioned earlier, about the sins of the Israelites. They didn't want to do this, didn't want to do that, even though they were experiencing miracles on a daily basis. They kind of were not exactly following God's law. And because of that, God led them through the desert for 40 years instead of straight into the Promised Land. Well, towards the end of this 40 years, Joshua is one of Moses' guys, his go-to guys. One of his go-to guys, let's put it that way. And Joshua was actually a spy, was one of the 12 spies, if you remember, that goes into the Promised Land, checks it out. You remember all the 12 spies come back, and most of them are saying, this is an unwinnable war. We've got a bunch of giants that we're going to be facing. He says, this is awful. If we go there, our armies are going to be devastated and cut down. This this is a bad idea. Joshua went against the grain and says, oh, look at this great land that God has given us, a land of milk and honey. This is going to be awesome. So Joshua's already one of those guys that goes against the grain. And Moses wasn't elected the leader of the Israelites. He wasn't there by popular vote. And for the same token, Joshua was not elected. He wasn't put there by the people. The people didn't elect him. The people didn't put him there. God put him there. And he was God's pick through Moses. And he didn't start out being the popular choice. And he was elected to be the guy for the job when Moses passed away. Now Moses was dead, and he left Joshua in charge, and he lost his mentor, the one guy that was in his corner. And now he didn't have that going for him, and he's left to lead a grumbling, complaining people, lead them north to where everybody's worried about these giants and invincible armies. And to say that Joshua was feeling discouraged and even fearful is really not a inaccurate statement. And saying that, let's go to Joshua chapter 1, which we got up here right now. It says, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land that I'm about to give to you, the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, from the great river, the Euphrates, to all the Hittite country, to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give to them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law that my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn to it from the right or the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. A couple of things that I noticed in this passage. Obviously, God is speaking to Joshua, who must have been fearful and must have been discouraged, because God wouldn't say more than 3 times, be strong and courageous, to a man that's already feeling confident, would he? Obviously, Joshua was kind of hurting, was kind of struggling. But regardless of the circumstances, the death of Moses, the complaints from the people, the job still needed to be done. The Israelites needed to be led into the promised land. And they were about to face uncertainties, and after barely eking out a life in the desert, they're going to have to go north and face possible giants, invincible armies, and who knows what. But Joshua was the man to lead them. And God spoke to Joshua and said, you will cross the Jordan and take possession of the land that the Lord God has given you. You will succeed. A public servant, the police officer, is a God-ordained position. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Protecting our citizens is our duty. To abandon this profession is to abandon a call from God for your life. We are few in number and we're not popular, but we're doing God's work. If you want to look up here, and it's hard to see, maybe it's easier to see for you guys because I got the lights in my eyes, but these are photos from Dallas, and I want to talk about Dallas real quick. I don't think there's a clearer picture of the love of God than these photos from Dallas. And let me tell you why. That night, most of you are aware, the police department was out there to protect the protesters while they're making, they're having their marches and everything else. And they're out there, doing their job. The protesters, literally minutes before, some of them were cursing the police officers. Some of them were wishing harm against them. Some of them were cursing the uniformed law enforcement in general. And then when those shots rang out, the very uniform that many of those or some of those were cursing, all of a sudden were there to protect them and shield them from gunfire. the very uniform that some of these people were actually cursing was there to protect them when gunfire rang out. Now tell me that this is not a God-ordained position, that law enforcement is not a God-ordained position, and tell me that this does not represent the love that God has for us, that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Realize that most of us, all of us, before we decided to turn to God, we're cursing Him. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And I think some of these photos from Dallas kind of represent that to me, that, you know, this is what we do. This is our job. And tell me this is not a God-ordained position that we have, that we're required to do to protect the public, even at our own peril, our own safety. Notes are stuck together. If I don't have notes, this would be about 2.5 to 3 hours. So the notes kind of keep me on track. So that's why I've got to have them. Be careful to obey all the law that my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything that is written in it. God reminds Joshua to stay the course of following His word. When we're discouraged, I find it's easy for us, even as Christians, to fall back into temptation, to fall back into some sins that we visited before. Even as Christians, when we're broken, bruised, beaten down, that's when we're most vulnerable. That's when it's most dangerous for us to kind of fall back into the wells that really don't satisfy. You know, whether it's the alcohol, whether it's chasing women, whether it's whatever, you name it, whatever sin it is that we've been saved out of. When we're broken, beaten, and bruised, and hurting, it's so easy for us to fall back into that. And Joshua is being warned, saying, obey the law that my servant Moses gave to you. Don't turn from it to the left or the right. You've got to focus on what the law says so you don't fall back into those wells that don't satisfy. And then he goes on and says, be strong and courageous. And he says this multiple times, be strong and very courageous. Joshua didn't get the blue flu. Cops, we know what that is. Or you kind of don't want to work. He didn't consult the elders and say that he felt overmatched. He didn't go to his retirement officer and say, hey, if I retire now, what am I going to be able to get? Can I retire now and still get some sort of retirement? He didn't start looking for other work, didn't look for replacements for himself. After this encouraging word from God, Joshua knew that there was a job to do, that he was going to do it. Despite the unknown dangers that were ahead, and the weak support that was behind him, Joshua was going to be the man for the job, and he didn't buckle. God gives him some instructions as he's talking to him. And he tells, so Joshua ordered the officers of the people, go through the camp and tell the people, get your provisions ready. 3 days from now, you're going to cross the Jordan, go in and take possession of the land that your Lord God has given you for your own. He says, get ready. To me, that says, get ready, make your provisions ready for us. It means gear up, train up, be prepared. I hate to say it, but I'm not a big fan of spending money. But unfortunately, most departments don't fully furnish everything that their officers need to do the job. In fact, a lot of departments hardly give you anything. They give you a commission, they tell you to go to work. Our department's pretty good about providing a lot of what we need, but not everything. And this is one of those times where you kind of have to break into the budget, maybe start thinking about getting into maybe an extra job or two or something to help cover the cost of this. But this is the time to start thinking about gearing up for yourself, for your personal protection, because you know a lot of the criminals that are out there to hurt us know that our armor can be easily defeated, and they've taken that knowledge and used it with deadly consequences. So if I were you, this is a time to start thinking about upgrading what you personally own, and have that with you. Also train up. I'm a motorcycle cop, and I'm our trainer for our police officers, for the motor officers. I'm the one that does the training for our motor officers. And I'm all about training. We do a lot of training throughout the year, multiple times a year, and even when we're not doing any formal training, I'll ride out to the course and do some practice on my own just to kind of stay trained up. The reason I do it, riding a motorcycle has a tendency to get you hurt if you don't know what you're doing. And doing it in a law enforcement profession or a law enforcement field really has a tendency to get you hurt if you don't know what you're doing. So practice, 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 train, that's what I do with the motorcycles. That's what I get my guys to do. We need to make sure that we're taking advantage of the training that's being offered to us. If your department doesn't offer it, seek it out. But most departments are really pushing to get their officers trained up in some of these scenarios, these active shooter scenarios and things like that. Take advantage of these training scenarios, take them to heart, and even if you don't get that, you can even take your squad, your teammates from your patrol sectors, and at the beginning of the shift, maybe y'all work together, little scenarios and training scenarios, practice up. There are ways you can train yourself even outside of formal training through the department, and take the advantage of that and train up. And finally, the last thing on this little area I would suggest, and I hate this, sounds like in service with a preacher, but this is kind of what this is right now. But to keep yourself physically fit. You know, a lot of us remember after July 16th last year, the terrorist attack in Chattanooga. After the adrenaline dump wore off, most of us woke up the next day really sore muscles. I woke up with sore muscles. I was like, man, I didn't even know I used those muscles. When you're running on adrenaline, your body's doing what it has to do to stay, you know, where you need to be and what you need to do. You know, you realize you need to stay physically fit. And I'm not, everybody knows me, I'm not Mr. Fitness. I'm not anything, I'm not SWAT team material, nothing like that. But do what you can to keep yourself physically fit so you can be an asset on the battlefield and not a hindrance. Those are some things that I'm getting from this. You know, it says get ready. I think we need to be getting ready. And I'm going to go ahead and try and bring this in for a landing. I don't know how many minutes early or late I am, but I want to try and bring it to our landing here just a little bit. But right now we're reeling at the latest surge in violence that's come against us. We're broken. Feels like we're not liked by very many people, but we are needed. And God created you, the guy and the girl that's wearing that uniform and that badge. He created you to endure, to stand up and overcome the enemy of this world. Remember, the enemy isn't a crib, it's not a blood, it's not a Roman 60s, it's not a this, it's not a that. The enemy is the spirit of this world in reality. And we forget that sometimes. I know physically we're in contact with people, but we forget who the real enemy is. And we need to remember that, and remember that we're created by God to stand up and endure and to go forward. Remember how the Israelites were always complaining and grumbling, and Joshua felt like he really didn't have anybody in his corner? I noticed a turn here, and if you go further on in Joshua, verse 16, it says, they answered Joshua, whatever you have commanded us to do, we will do. Wherever you send us, we will go. Just as we fully obeyed Moses, so we will obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Joshua went to the elders and the officers of the people to pass on this information, and all of a sudden he's met with support, with affirmation from the people that he's doing the right thing. He's getting support all of a sudden. And they promised Joshua that they're behind him. Immediately after Dallas and Baton Rouge, what did we start seeing? We started seeing support from people coming out of the woodwork saying, man, we're behind you. We support you. We know you guys are doing the right thing. We are behind you. There's probably not a police officer in this room that can honestly say that they've been at work in uniform the last 2 weeks and not at least once had somebody try to buy their lunch for them. It's happened to me 4 times in the last 2 weeks. Somebody's tried to buy my lunch in uniform. There have been people coming out of everywhere saying, man, we support you, we're praying for you. They just published a video today. Our local church did it for Chattanooga Police, with the Chattanooga Police Department, talking about how they're praying for us. People are coming out and supporting us and showing their support for us in record numbers. And I think a lot of the world is realizing, you know what? The media is telling one story. And the media is putting out there that this is happening, the police officers are racist, the police officers are murderers, the police officers are this and that. And I think that people are finally starting to realize, I don't think that's quite the truth. And we're actually getting affirmation from the majority of the people that we work with day in and day out. Hey, I think you guys are on the right track. I think you guys are doing the right thing. I've had people come up to me out of the blue just to give me a hug or whatever. And it's been incredible to see the support that's out there. So we really aren't alone. We feel like we are right now, but we're not. Just all it takes is a chance to take the time to look around and realize that there's a lot of people behind us that have our back. We've been bombarded with these messages of hate, and really there's a different message that's coming out there. If we turn off the media, turn off the Facebook, turn off the news feeds, all the news stuff, and go out to the community and talk to the people, I think you'll realize there's a totally different message that's out there than what we're seeing on the news, what we're seeing on our Facebook feeds, what we're seeing on the social media sites. Turn that stuff off, go out and talk and walk among the communities that you represent, and you'll be surprised at the level of support that's out there. So just as God told Joshua to be strong and courageous, I believe he's telling us the same thing today. Get prepared, follow the laws that God has laid out for us in his word, be strong and courageous, and really more people have your back than you think. John, if you want to come up for me, please.
Would you let Joe know that you appreciate him and appreciate his heart? He didn't do that for an applause, and it was difficult probably for him to do that. As somebody that cares about you. He shared an incredible message with us that the work's got to be done. We're not in an unusual place. God is with us. So do what we know to do. Keep doing the job. And remember that you're not alone. Be encouraged. We're going to make it. You believe that? We're going to make it. I've got one amen. Amen. And there we go. Would you stand with